Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and thank you so much for clicking on this video. So let's get right to it. We're going to look at 12 of the toughest Sega Genesis bosses. Starting off the list at number 12, Scar from The Lion King. Now, Disney did not go easy on kids back in the day. For the most part, the video games were never a walk in the park. The final fight against Scar is not just a boss battle, but a super tricky platforming course full of pesky hyenas that you had to swat away. By the time you reach the showdown against your backstabbing uncle, you're lucky if you had enough health to even withstand a few blows from him. It's a beautifully executed level, but it is hard. Not to mention that you have to keep maneuvering back and forth to swat at Scar and push him further and further back off the cliff. While a mistake or two on your part and you'll lose all of your progress and your life. Number 11, Spiderman / Batman from Revenge of Shinobi. Alright, first off, let's mention the music. Every level is a banger. Okay, with that out of the way, as awesome as a ninja versus Spider-Man versus Batman, Godzilla, the Terminator, or even Rambo is, Sega didn't actually go through the correct legal channels to make this insane crossover happen. Marvel ended up licensing Spider-Man for the later pressings of the cartridge, though the Batman sprite had to be completely redesigned. Now, the battle in itself is pretty tough. Not only do you have to fight Spider-Man, who has a small hitbox, and you have to dodge all of his webbing, but if you do manage to beat him, he transforms into Batman with a whole new health meter, and you have to do battle with the Dark Knight. Not an easy task. Number 10, the Death Egg Robot from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Alright guys, first off, let's just say another Genesis game with another amazing soundtrack. So, looking at the Death Egg Robot, he doesn't have really tough patterns. You know, it's not that hard to avoid his attacks. He's going to shoot an arm at you. There's the homing rocket missile that you have to try and get away from, and he tries to squish you. It's not that hard to avoid him. The hard part, what puts this on the list at number 10, is that you don't have any rings when you fight him. Not to mention that you have to get through Mega or Mecha Sonic first. You take one hit and it's all the way to the back of the start of the level. It's surprisingly tough for a Sonic game, but at the end, this is a tough but fair challenge, and it'll establish you as a true Sonic player. Sonic 2, probably the greatest game in the franchise. Let me know what you think. Number 9, Aito from Beyond Oasis. Now, Beyond Oasis has been called the Middle Eastern flavored Legend of Zelda, and in some ways, its fighting and animation are even better than Zelda, even if the overall package isn't on par with Nintendo's series. Now, Aito is the big boss battle that you've been working toward the whole game, and when you finally get to fight him face to face, this evil sorcerer is kind of weak. He's just a guy who goes down pretty quickly. But of course, that's just his first stage. In his second stage, Aito transforms into what we love, the massive screen-filled horror. I love when a boss takes up the whole screen. He's still not the most difficult boss on this list, but he's got quite a few tricks up his sleeves. Watch out for those tentacles. And he is one of the cooler looking guys on the Genesis. This does make a very satisfying finale to your adventure. If you've never tried Beyond Oasis, guys, this one is a recommendation. Number 8, Mother Brain, Phantasy Star 2. Now, the biggest knock that this game and the bosses usually get is that they're barely animated. First off, Mother Brain, no, not that one, has an astonishing design, perched on top of the screen like a four-armed goddess, complete with different colors constantly pulsating through her body. This is about as close as the Genesis can come to conveying the confrontation with the superior power. It was intimidating back in the day. In addition, as for the fight itself, it requires real strategy to win. Again, it's not the hardest final boss you're going to find on this list, or even in a JRPG, not even close. But it does take a solid mix of defense and offense to come out ahead, and if you don't know what you're doing, Mother Brain will quickly wipe you and your entire party out. Number 7, the Hydra from Shinobi 3. This is the only time you're going to see two different Number 7 is the Hydra from Shinobi 3. Now, normally I'd like to pick one boss battle per franchise, but you know, everyone knows how difficult Shinobi games are, and there are plenty of tough bosses to pick throughout this franchise as it is, but there's just something about the Hydra fight that puts it at number 7 on this list. The first thing that you have to contend with is the creepy factor this boss presents. A close second is you have to perfectly dodge his hands, that laser blast. There's nothing worse than avoiding all of his offense just to miss your window of opportunity and not hit that small hitbox. This is a fantastic fight. Again, great music. It looks fantastic. You know, like, I am the Loch Ness Monster, but there's days where I thought I could change my names to some kind of word pun for Genesis games. Number 6, Warhead from Vector Man. You know, I wish Vector Man would get a reboot or a new game or something, another sequel. I'd love to see some retro-styled game for the 20s. That's weird to call it the 20s now. Maybe even something along the lines of, remember how they redid Rayman that we got a couple of years back? You know, something like that for Vector Man. Vector Man was and still is a fun but challenging platforming game. Both of them. It had some truly beautiful graphics, and if you didn't like them, you could at least say they tried something different for what was in gaming at the time. Now, moving on to the boss fight, this is one of the harder final stages in all of the Genesis world. Not only does he have a sizable health pool, but you also need to avoid his attacks while trying to score your own, and let's face it, those graphics do make you feel super dizzy. Number 5, the Vortex Queen, Echo the Dolphin. Now, everyone loves Echo the Dolphin, and they fondly remember it as one of the better games on the Genesis in the 90s. But a lot of people forget that it's a hard game. Like, after that first fun level, it really ramps up the difficulty. Now, once you make it all through the game and you get to the alien ship, of course it's an alien ship, it's a Genesis game, you have to come face to face with something out of H.P. Lovecraft. You are fighting the Vortex Queen. You have to slowly whittle away her health, and she's got a huge health bar. You have to slowly whittle down her power and pop off her jaw, not once but twice, because it keeps growing back. Once you do that and you don't get caught staring at her soulless black eyes, you might have a chance at beating the Vortex Queen. Time for the honorable mention on this list. Now, it's not really hard from Splatterhouse 2, especially if you know what you're doing. The hardest part of this game is probably the clunky controllers, but the ultimate evil from Splatterhouse 2 is our honorable mention just because of how fun of a fight it is and the lead up to what happens. Like, you finally escape the mansion, you save your girlfriend Jennifer, and then this just big blob of body parts comes out after you, and you just have to punch and kick the crap out of it while it's throwing arms and legs and dog heads at you. It's really fun. Not the hardest fight, but you know, this has to be our honorable mention. Coming in at number 4, Superpower Robot Yokozuna from Contra Hardcore. Now, this definitely is the winner of Best Boss Name, hands down. So coming from the only Contra game on the Genesis, it's one of the best Contra games overall. Now, Contra games are infamous for their difficulty, and their running, and their gunning, and their dodging, and their explosions right from the start, but this is a title that just keeps throwing it at you level after level. The final battle against superpower robot Yokozuna has you fighting against a giant robot while speeding down the track on top of a train. Sounds fun, right? It's another tough boss battle where it feels like there isn't really any pattern. Constant shooting and dodging are your friends for this one. Number 2 is a tie between Shia K from Mortal Kombat 2 and M Bison from Street Fighter 2. Now yes, both of these guys have already showed up on the toughest SNES bosses, and some people might even argue that with the 3-button controller, if that's all you had, they'd actually be harder on the Genesis. But that comes down to the hardware and not the game. These guys are ranked a little higher on the Genesis because they don't seem to pose as great a threat as they did on the Super Nintendo. But both of these boss fights are well deserving to be on this spot on the list. Depending on who you are and depending on the day, these guys could be tied for number 1. Number 2, Death from Shockin', the Forever Man. Now for some games, extreme difficulty is a feature rather than a bug, and for others, it's the exact opposite. For Shockin', the Forever Man, it seems that both are true. This title demands absolute precision, perfect recall, a light speed trigger figure, and frankly, a fair amount of luck. While it can easily be argued that the levels are made far more difficult by clunky controls and awkward platforming, the torturous nature of the final boss fight seems entirely intentional. Constant movement, difficult dodging, and a microscopic hitbox makes for a brutal end to a legendarily brutal game. Anyone that's played this one before knows how hard these levels are. The double jumps, the quick time trigger finger, even the bats can take you out. This end boss could have been number 1 very easily. And coming in at number 1, 7 Force, Gunstar Heroes. Now, 7 Force starts the battle in a giant running robot form named Soldier Force. Once you're able to destroy him, you're in for one hell of a fight. Depending on the difficulty level that you choose between normal or hard, you're going to have to fight 5 or 7 forms of this boss. Also, after Soldier Force, the rest of the transformations are always randomized. Just keep shooting and dodging and adjust your fighting tactics depending on the soldier form, and you should be able to make it out after a few dozen tries. And that's gonna do it for this list of the toughest Genesis bosses. Was there someone that you think should have been on this list, or would you rank them differently? Let me know down in the comments, I'd love to hear why. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Take care.